Well, it is Saturday, and I don't know about where you are, but it is colder than I am used to here in Kansas. Since I moved from California, I don't normally need to wear a jacket, but today I would recommend wearing a jacket. But my lovely 8-year-old, I go outside and he's turned on the car and has the defroster on, and he's scraping my windows. So he's getting used to being in Kansas, so that's good. But today we're inside, we're hopefully toasty warm, and who doesn't want to track students across multiple sheets in a spreadsheet? That is my idea of a good time on a Saturday. So let me give you the link. This is the link to the Google Slides. You didn't get it already. And then I have a template to kind of get you started. So as usual, when you do a webinar, you want to try and arrange your windows side by side. So if you could get where you can see the video, my presentation, my screen share on one side of your screen, and get the spreadsheet linked to the template on the other side of the screen, that would be awesome. Now, if your screen's too small to really facilitate being in a Google Meet where you can see the video and the screen share and multitask and do the item at the same time, allow me to full screen and show you how I handle that. I'm going to present my entire screen. So what you can hopefully see here is that I have side-by-side windows. I have the Google Slides next to the Google Meet. But one of the things you might want to try doing, because I'd like you to actually click on things on the spreadsheet, is if you make the spreadsheet 3/4 of your screen. So I get it up in the upper left-hand corner, and then I make the Google Meet in the bottom right-hand corner 3/4 of my screen so they overlap. So you see I have this nice edge border of each of them. So I click here, I can do the spreadsheet, and I click over here, I get back to the Google Meet. So if you can go back and forth relatively easily, that will help us do this interactively. Let me copy and paste for those of you who just joined. You want to have the template, because if you don't try it, this isn't going to be that helpful. Okay, so let's go through just a couple of things. Oh, whoops, it would be really super if I put the screen sharing back on. Window, this one. Here we go. Now, if you're not using spreadsheets to track data, you're doing something inefficient is my guess. So, but here is the deal, is you should of course use a spreadsheet, but the rule number one is you never ever type the same thing twice. You don't type a kid's name twice, you don't type a grade twice, you do not type an assignment title twice. Whatever it is, you only ever put information once. You put it once. And what we call that in spreadsheets is cell referencing, is we reference the cell that I typed it in rather than typing it a second, third, or fifth time. So we're going to do some cell referencing today, and the most basic cell reference is the equal sign, the equal sign. So what we're going to do is just type equals, and it equals whatever I already typed, and I can have it show up in multiple places. And then we're going to use some check boxes, because that is the best part of Google Sheets spreadsheets. I'm pretty sure it's check boxes. And then I'm going to try and get you to use some VLOOKUP. Some VLOOKUP where we go and look up information that's on my spreadsheet, because I will not type something twice. And I would like to remind you that the reason that we are doing a webinar is so that you can ask questions, so that you can try it. so that we can interact together. And thank you to those of you who have your video on. It is not required, but it's certainly nice for me. Marianne, so happy to see you. Let me get the, in the chat, I have the link to the template. So please stop me, ask me questions, and don't let me go faster than you can keep up. So, questions? Not so far. Okay. In the chat, do you have any goals? Like you have some spreadsheets or you'd like to have a spreadsheet, but you just don't know how to. What pain points are you hoping that I can solve besides what I already said that I was going to do? Anyone have anything they want to make sure I cover? Okay. All right. And you can put those in the chat or turn on your microphone at any time. Does everybody have the template, the spreadsheet template? I'm going to, oops, Control 0. I'm going to Control plus. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to do Command. Zoom in so it's bigger for you. There we go. So I have gone to listofrandomnames.com and how to add checkboxes across multiple sheets. Sounds good, Kirk. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I have made a roster on here. These are all fake names. These are all fake names. So the first thing that we will just do here is let's go to the contacts tab. You'll see that I have 2 tabs down at the bottom. Let me zoom this out just a little bit. So you have the roster tab and the contacts tab. Now on the contacts tab, you'll notice that I have my student roster, which you're like, Alice, you have violated the rule. The rule is you can only type it once, but I did not violate the rule. I did not violate the rule because if you would please, on the contacts tab, double click on any of the student names. So if you will double click on any of the student names, what you'll notice is it is not their name. It is rather a formula where I use cell referencing to reference back to the roster sheet and say whatever is on roster sheet in cell A2, put that here. And so that's what we're going to practice for a second. If you go back to the roster sheet and change the first student to be your name. So that when you go to the contact sheet, you'll notice that I now have my name on the contact sheet because this is rule number 1. Rule number 1, maybe through rule number 1,000, you never type the same information twice. We use an equal sign. Okay, this is the template, so I'm going to make a copy myself so I can set it up without messing up anybody who'd like the template. Down in the bottom left, you'll see that there is a plus icon to add a sheet. So the purpose of this particular webinar is to practice cell referencing when I have multiple sheets in the spreadsheet. So if you'd go ahead and add a sheet, you should be looking at a blank sheet. And let's just call this one attendance. So I'm going to double click on the tab where it says sheet 3 for me, and I'm going to rename it to attendance. So you can rename a tab in Google Sheets just by double clicking on the tab. Now what I want is I want the roster from the first sheet to show up on this second sheet. So the way you do that is you just type an equal sign. That's the whole formula. You just type an equal sign. Best formula ever, just an equal sign. And then you say, okay, well, I want to equal whatever is in cell, and you go click on it. So I have typed the equal sign. I'm going to click on the roster tab at the bottom. And then I'm going to click on A2. So whatever is in roster tab A2 and push enter, and then that name is going to show up on my spreadsheet. So whatever information, you only type things once, and everything else we do with an equal sign. You only get to type it once. Where are you going to put it? So let's do it again. I'm in A3. I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to go to the roster tab and click on A3 and push enter. And you'll see that I now have the second name on my roster. And you're like, Alice, you got to be joking me. This is slow. You're right. So the trick is, if I double click, this is where my formula is in A3. It says roster exclamation mark A3. Now notice I'm doing A3 to A3, but you don't have to. So a lot of times I'll have like a lot of data and I'm like, I really only look at 2 or 3 columns of this. So I'll make a new sheet and I'll go equals F3 for this one, and then equals Z3. So I get what would be in columns F and Z right next to each other. Now it's just in those 2 columns. So you can click on any of them. But if you go back and single click, remember double click does editing. If you single click, this box shows up in the corner. And that's the fill down square. So we're going to hover over the fill down square. It's right in the bottom right hand corner. It's this box on the cell. And as you pull it down, you'll see that it copy and pastes your formula. So it brings in all of the students from the roster.
Alice?
Yes.
Is the reference, is that for the contacts or for the roster?
Roster.
Roster. Thank you.
In theory, it wouldn't matter, Lauren, because no matter what, I'm only typing things one time. That's my cardinal rule. I type it once. So if
no, because you said that roster has already formula in there. It's already.
Yes. Well, if I were to go, Lauren, if I go equals and I go to the contacts tab and I type on the student name, so my formula is equals contacts tab A2, it's going to give me the same information because that one's linking back to the roster also. I mean, I generally try to reference the original data, but it literally doesn't matter if you follow rule number 1. If rule number 1, you never type the same information twice, then it doesn't really matter where you cell reference that information because that cell's referencing the original. But I do try to reference the original regardless.
Okay, thank you.
Alice, could you back up? I'm sorry. I'm not getting to copy the information from
to
contacts, to attendance. How did you do that?
I just added a new tab. I just did
right. I did get that one, but then I cannot transfer the roster, like my name, into attendance.
You're gonna type an equal sign. And then you click on the roster tab. So now I'm looking at the roster tab.
Yeah.
And then I click on the cell that I want to bring into the value into this sheet.
Okay. And then how do you get BB Johnson?
Well, when I push enter, whatever is in there.
Okay. And you press return. All right. Yeah. Let me try it.
On the roster, you know, if I start changing these names, me, my sister, and my brother. I notice when I click on attendance, it has me, my sister, and my brother, and me, because I did it twice just for fun, just to show you. And on the contacts, it has me, my sister, and my brother. So you see I changed it in one place, and everywhere that it's talking about that kid, it updated. That's the key. That is the key. All right, now my favorite thing is to always freeze the first row. If you're using a spreadsheet, you should freeze the first row. So if you go to the row indicator 1 and you hover above row indicator 1, there is a bar and you can pull the freeze bar down to freeze the first row, or you can go to the view menu, go to freeze, and freeze the first row using the view menu. I like the grabby hand, whichever way is your favorite. I'm going to, here on attendance, I'm going to start taking attendance. So I'm going to put today is 12/12 and tomorrow is 12/13. So in those headers, I'm going to start putting the dates for my attendance. Now what spreadsheets let you do is highlight a pattern and continue the pattern. I highlight a pattern and continue the pattern. So I'm taking the 12/12 and the 12/13. I'm going to highlight those two dates, and you'll notice that big square, big, small, but there's a square in the bottom right-hand corner. That's the fill down square. I can fill down or I can fill to the right. So when I pull this to the right, I grab that little square and I pull it to the right. It gives me all the dates. Big time saver. So see if you can get attendance dates up at the top. Give me a thumbs up when you've got it. Okay, thank you. All right. Hey, babe.
The verdict in Johnson.
Hey, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on cell B2, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of my roster. Yes, I don't know the European way. You're on your own on that one. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going to click on the upper left, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to click on the bottom right. So shift and bottom right, so that for that whole big range, I've highlighted it. So I click, shift key, click. Gives me a big range. And then we want to insert checkbox. This is so lovely. I love insert checkbox. Boom. Look at all those checkboxes. This literally makes my day. So go ahead and start marking some kids on their attendance. You're like, Alice, all this clicking is so tedious. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to click on the one cell. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on the bottom cell. Remember, we just did this. You click on a cell, hold down the shift key, click on a different cell, and it gets the whole range. Hit the space bar. Checks everybody. So see here, I'm going to click there, shift key, and I click there. It gives me the whole range is highlighted. Space bar. What? Yes. Tell me that's all you've ever wanted in life. Is to make a bunch of check boxes all at once. So cool. If you would click on column B, you can see that column B is the whole thing is highlighted, and you right click and insert one to the left. Right click and insert one to the left. And you'll see that it has added more checkboxes. I'm going to delete that. Let's hit the delete key. I got rid of the checkboxes. Because what I want to do is I want to count. I want to count if they came, right? So I'm going to, in cell B2, I'm going to put equals count if. I want to count if they have a checkbox. Check whatever this checkbox means, present or not present. You decide. And I am going to cheat, and I'm going to highlight a few of the check boxes for the first person in the spread on the roster. Now here's a little secret. I'm going to go from C2 to the rest of row 2, right? From C2 to the rest of row 2. So I could change this to Z2, from C2 to Z2, where I just edit it myself because I'm too lazy to drag it all the way over there. But actually, if you just do C2:2, it'll count all of row 2, starting at column C. I want to count if from C2 to 2, comma, I want to count if it's true. So a checkbox has a value of true. Checkbox has a value of true. So we're going to count if C2:2. So all of row 2, we're going to count if it's true. Enter. So you can see as I do more checkboxes, the counts go up. It's all you've ever wanted in life, right? For reals. Make checkboxes and count them. Yes. Let's do it again on B3. Equals count if. That's my formula. It has to start with an equal sign. It has to say count if in a parenthesis. And I'm going to start to highlight my range, but I'm like, I'm so lazy. I don't want to drag all the way over there. So I have to think. Do I want all of column E, or do I want all of row 3? Lauren,
3.
that comes with practice. You can do it. So I'm going to get rid of the E because I'm going to go from C3 to 3, and I want to count if the value is true. If you wanted to count if they were not checked, you could do false. So true or false. I'm not going to type that formula 500 times. So do you see this little square in the corner? I'm going to double click on the square in the corner. Remember last time we dragged it down, or we dragged it across the fill down square? I drag down the fill down square. I drag across the fill down square. But if you double click on it, it'll fill down. There are reasons that it doesn't work, but when it does work, it's beautiful. Okay, I have tracked attendance. I have tracked attendance. So I'm going to go back to my roster, and I want to know attendance. I'm tracking the attendance on the attendance tab, but I'd like a summary or a dashboard here on this roster, right? So next to Alice for her attendance, I'm going to put an equal sign. I'm going to go back to the attendance tab. I'm going to click on the attendance count for Alice. Boom. And I'm going to take the fill down square and I'm going to pull it down, and I'm going to get everybody's attendance. So that when I go over to the attendance tab, and I have more attendance, you'll see that on the roster tab, I have more attendance. And so whatever I do on the attendance tab is going to show up on my roster tab. That's all I want. Matthew, you can write your formulas however you want, just as long as you're cell referencing all the sheets. I'm going to give you a tip, not a rule, but a tip. Don't give your spreadsheet tabs names with a space. If you have to code these things or do anything where you reference it, it has to reference the name of the tab exactly, and it becomes not fun sometimes. So my tip is just when you're making a spreadsheet is to think like, how can I clearly communicate what goes on this tab in one word, or I smash all my words together, but I try to keep it short. Try to keep it short. All right, now if they have bad attendance, I need to call their mom, right? Yeah. So I'm going to put the contact up here. I'm on the roster tab. I'm on the roster tab, and I want to go grab their phone number. But in this time, I'm going to do it slightly differently. Slightly differently. I could still use the equals trick. That one's the easiest one. I say equals, and then I go grab it. The problem is with doing the equal sign is what if stuff gets moved around or the order's not the same for some reason? Then it kind of breaks. So what I'm going to do on this one, so bear with me. I'm going to do it, so you're going to want to watch me. Put me in full screen if you can. If you click on the little people tab, you can pin the presentation onto the main screen. And then you can see all of it if you would like. I'm going to do equals VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is vertical lookup. And I want to look up. I'm going to click on the student's name. I want to look up their name. I'm going to look up their name. So whatever's in A2, I want to go look that up. Comma. Where am I going to go look that up? Where will I look that up? Okay, so I go to the contacts tab, and I'm going to highlight this whole table. Now you're like, Alice, what if I get more students? Good question. I'm going to take off the 51. You see how this goes from A2 to column C, but all of it? All of column C. If I just take out the 52, it'll just like, yeah, all of C, just all of it. That would be great. But here's something I would like you to do when you do a VLOOKUP. When you do a VLOOKUp, you want to have a $ in front of the columns and rows of the table. So this is called absolute cell referencing. So do you remember when we wrote the formula and we said row 2, give me all the count if it's row 2 has checkboxes? And then I dragged the fill down square and it said, now I'm going to count row 3, and now I'm going to count row 4, and now I'm going to count row 5. So usually when you write a formula and you drag it and move it or copy and paste it, the formula adjusts to the pattern. But you're like, yeah, no, this doesn't move. So if it doesn't move, it's always in this spot. Then you want to lock it down, like you put your money in the bank. Don't touch my money. Don't touch my cell referencing. So you put $ in front of, for the table cell reference, in front of the A, always column A. In front of the 2, always row 2. $ in front of the C, always row column C. But those won't move. I recommend you just make a nice habit of that. When you do a VLOOKUP, now you notice I do not have absolute cell referencing on the A2. The A2 is relative because I do want that to move. I want first kid, second kid, third kid. I want to look up each one of them. So I don't want $ on that one. That one I want to adjust down the list. But my table does not move. So cell A2, I'm going to look up cell A2 on this table, comma, which column do you want to return? I'm looking up column 1, which is, if this was somewhere in the middle of the spreadsheet, it would still be the first column of what I highlighted. Do I want the parent's name? Do I want their phone number? I want the phone number, so I'm going to put a 2. No, 3. Right? Student is in row 1, column 1. Parent is in column 2. Phone number is in column 3. Now, Is it alphabetical? True or false? Alphabetical. Is my table alphabetical? And that would be false. Not alphabetical. If it's true, I'm saying that my data is in order. If it's false, I'm saying it's not. There's some good reasons that another time I could explain that. So this is my formula. And then I take that fill down square and I pull it all the way down so I get the phone number for that student. I'm going to give you the formula. I'm going to put it into the chat. So Lauren, if you have comments, it would be the same thing. You would have a sheet where you've put the comments in there. And then back on the roster, you could put an equals and go grab that comment or whatever that it is. So today's specific objective that I could do in 30 minutes is we're going to practice using the equal sign, having some check boxes, and then if you need to, using some VLOOKUP. So why would I use VLOOKUP as opposed to the equal sign would have worked great for these contacts, right? Equal sign would have worked great. But if I create a new sheet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, I create a new sheet, I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose data validation. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do data validation. And it says my criteria is a list from a range. So I'm going to click on this little 2x2 square. I'm going to click on the 2x2 square. Nope, that's not what I want. I'm going to click over on the roster. And I'm going to highlight the roster. So I have done data validation against my roster. So here I'm on sheet 4. Notice I can pick. It now gives me a drop-down list of all my students. So here's the thing, is that this changes. So I can't do a cell reference with equals because it's not matching up, along the roster. So in this case, I have to do an equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up whatever name I picked from the list, comma, go over to the contact sheet. I'm going to highlight the whole table of contacts. Now, just in case I get more students, I'm going to get rid of the bottom. But I am going to put the $sign on the A, and the $sign on the 2, and the $sign on the C. Like, this is where my table is, and it doesn't move. And I want the parent's name, so that's 1, 2, second column of my table. And false, it is not alphabetical. Is it alphabetical? False. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to say equals VLOOKUP. It doesn't matter if it's capitalized or not. I'm going to look up whichever student I pick, comma. I'm going to go over to my table on the contacts. I'm going to highlight the whole table. Get my $sign for my cell references in there. Even if you don't need it, I recommend you just be in the habit of always $signing your table. And then I'm going to do column 3 so I can pick up the phone number, and it's also false. So what you'll see is that when I change the student in the list, it also changes who their parent is and what the phone number is. So I'll just do that real quick one more time. Actually, hold on. I'm supposed to have another meeting right now. Let me just text this person. Okay, so it is not my intention to show you data validation for this webinar, so I'm just going to do it one more time and be done with it. But just the reason that I would use an equal sign versus VLOOKUP. An equal sign works great if everything's in the right position and nothing moves around. An equal sign is not great in a circumstance where I'm going to right-click, do data validation, and I'm going to go get that range of student names so that I have a drop-down list. And I highlight the student names into the data range. And I can do that trick too where I go the rest of column A so that it gives me a drop-down list. And since I'm using a drop-down list, then the VLOOKUP is the better choice instead of the equal sign. All right, my friends, I went over by 8 minutes. I apologize. If you would like this, I'm going to do sample formulas for across spreadsheets. If you'd like a copy of my data. Hey, Ash. Oops. Wouldn't it be great if I'd actually copied? Here we go. And here. And there. Okay. So there you go. So now you got to go practice doing VLOOKUP because it's fun. Kirk, for your, if it's just completely different spreadsheets, you'd have to use the import range. So you'd add a new tab, you would do import range, and then you would do either the VLOOKUP or the cell referencing with the equal sign off of that sheet that's doing the import range. So that will give you something, I mean, obviously any of these formulas you can Google search. Import range, Kirk, for the completely separate spreadsheet. Okay. This is fun times for a Saturday, or at least it's my idea of a good time. And if you have other webinars that you would like to suggest, I did send out the premium newsletter just a little bit ago, and there's a button on there to suggest office hours or to suggest webinars so I can make sure I'm hitting the mark on stuff that you would like to learn. Okay.
And so a week from today, you're going to be a new homeowner?
Well,